always use props. I know casting directors always like, "Never use props." I always use props. I love, like, the corny, like, glasses acting, like, where you're like you just take them off and you have a moment and then you put your glasses back on to think more, like, come on, it's so much fun if you really kind of give over to, like, "Oh, that looks like TV."
What's going on, everybody? My name is Hassiem Muhammad, and you are listening to The Actor's Instrument, where we discuss the essential qualities you need to stand out in the entertainment industry. Okay, there's no exact statistic that shows what percentage of aspiring actors ever land a speaking role on television, but based on industry data and some expert estimates, it's likely under 1%, and maybe even closer to half of 1%. Less than 1% of anyone who ever says, I want to be an actor, ends up with a speaking role on television. So, how do you become a part of this exclusive group? That's what we're discussing this week on The Actor's Instrument. Joining me today is an actress who has amassed nearly 20 co star roles on TV, which just blew my mind when she said that. McKenna Kerrigan is a Philly based actress whose credits include off Broadway plays, including the world premiere of Middletown at the Vineyard Theater in New York, films like A Knock at the Cabin and Aftermath, television appearances on The Night Agent, Tires, The Girls on the Bus, and my favorite show of all time, Criminal Minds. McKenna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Hassiem, I'm glad to be here.
When I saw you on Criminal Minds, I was like, I know her. It is genuinely my favorite TV show
I
ever.
know that you love it. I know that you love it. What's the reason behind that? How did it start for you?
Well, I think, like, the thriller genre is my favorite genre.
Mhm.
Um, Big fan of, like, the '90s, like, psychological thrillers, which you don't they don't really make those anymore.
Yeah.
So, Criminal Minds is, like, the closest thing that we've got to that. My sisters got me hooked on it when I was, like, early high school. We would literally watch it all day long. And then one of my sisters and I, we would watch it intentionally, like, super late at night because some of those episodes are, like, really spooky. Um,
Yeah. And graphic too. There's some
and
crazy stuff on that show.
and all based on true stories,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is the really not just scary, but sad part because there's well, based on true stories, and they, like, have toned it down for TV.
Yeah.
And that's the terrifying part because there are some episodes where you're like, "Oh my god, I can barely watch this," and to think they toned it down.
You were just speaking about, going in multiple times for a casting director, and I probably auditioned for that show 4 or 5 or 6 times before I booked it,
Wow.
and one of the first auditions that I had was for, a woman who'd been bitten, by a rabid animal, and so the whole audition was you had to prep to be rabid, and walk into the audition and really kind of zombify yourself, and so, yeah,
Oh
that's my
my
first my
goodness.
first experience.
We always get these crazy requests. Like,
Yeah.
I did this tape yesterday. It was for a commercial, and usually commercial tapes are pretty quick. But it was like I'm not gonna say too much detail because I just auditioned for it, and so they probably don't want all the info out there. But basically, it was like 3 different scenes. One included being in a hammock, and I'm like, "What?" There was, like, food in for one scene, there was a hammock for another scene. They were like, "The character has an absurd amount of TV remotes," and I'm like, "This is so much."
It's like it's hours of your time, like, prepping, and it's design too. I mean, I think that's the other part of it. It's like, we're fully making short films now.
Oh,
If you're doing
absolutely.
it right, you're making a short film.
Absolutely, and I wanna get more into your process because clearly, McKenna, you've figured something out, and I wanna chat today a lot about, like, the co-star role because as I mentioned, less than 1% of actors people who say they would like to be actors, so I'm including, like, the person who one day wakes up and goes, "I wanna be an actor," and moves to LA and probably doesn't ever do anything, up to, the folks who work pretty consistently. Of that huge umbrella group of people, less than 1% ever get a speaking role on television. And for those who don't know, uh, the co-star role is typically a role that has 5 to 7 or less lines. It's usually like the first uh, build speaking role on television. So beyond extras, your face, yeah, you're on TV, but you don't say anything. Co-stars is like, you have words now. Um, and so for a lot of actors, that's the first goal.
Yeah.
That's the first benchmark. Like, oh my, can I just book a co-star?
Mhm.
I've got a couple under my belt,
Yeah.
but McKenna, nearly 20?
You know, honestly, like, it's totally bananas because right now and I know this was different in the past, but right now, a co-star can be, that one line of like, "Here's your coffee, madam," or it can be 2 heavy scenes with the number 1 on the show, and they
Uh-huh.
don't really make a distinction between those things anymore, so what you might book in a co-star can really vary and kind of being prepped for whatever that might be, um, yeah, I think can take a lot of people by surprise. I mean, I should just speak for myself. It definitely I've been taken by surprise sometimes when,
Yeah.
I've realized what was gonna be, called for.
Yeah. And I can speak to that a little bit because my spot on Blue Bloods, my manager, who I signed with shortly after that appearance, she thought it was a guest star spot,
Right,
but it was billed as a co-star because
right.
it was a nice spot. I had multiple scenes
Yep,
with the lead cast.
yep.
You know, it was a story about like my family and what happened to my son, and so it was, it was centric around my character, but it was billed as a co-star.
Right, and I think, maybe 20 years ago, it would have been, and it would have been a certain amount of money, and
Sure.
it would have been a certain
Yeah.
your name would have been in a certain place and all this stuff, and that's just one of the changes that I know that people speak about all the time, which is, yeah, what's being asked of people, in a co-star, and kind of like, yeah, how you can prep for that and how you can understand the whole range of what they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Now, how in your experience, how would you quantify like the difficulty of booking a spot on TV? Because again, we keep talking about like, oh, maybe it's only a couple lines here. Like, how hard could that be?
Right. It's so hard. I mean, it's so hard. Like, I feel like I have a way that I really like to do them now. There's certain little weird things that I like to do. I really like to design it. I'm really into hair and makeup and costume and props.
Ah.
Always use props. I know casting directors always like never use props. I always use props. I love like the corny like glasses acting, like where you're like you just
Oh,
take them off and you have a moment and then you put your
yeah.
glasses back on to think more. Like, come on, it's so much fun if you really kind of give over to like, oh, that looks like TV.
Yeah.
And so it still is your artistry and, if you have a theater background, it's still very much grounded in all the things about what you want and how you're getting it, but, um, I really am into the design element and the how do you craft, even if it's one line, how do you craft 3 pictures, 3 really clear pictures in your audition? Because it's a visual medium, and so you have to be thinking in terms of telling the story visually, often turning off the volume and just watching yourself in terms of pictures, and to make
Yeah.
sure that that's, like, really built into whatever you're sending, and that you like it, and I think that's the other thing that, I've gotten a lot better at, which is just, like, please yourself. You know what I mean? Like, does this make me laugh? Does this crack me up? Do I think this is ridiculously stupid? Let's send it. Like, let's send it out there and see what happens. Because chances are they're not gonna say yes. So you might as
Mm,
well be like, "I love that. Oh, it's so dumb. I sent that.
yeah.
Oh, man, I didn't get it. Oh, well." But, like, I'm having a good time, you know what I mean? I think that's a big part of it.
That's what's up. And I love that you can point to and describe this process that you have. Um, Ray Dalio, who is a hedge fund manager, billionaire, gives some great advice. And uh, this piece of advice that I always come back to from a book of his that I read is that you should only take advice from someone who has done the thing you're trying to do at least 3 times
Yeah,
successfully. So they've already done it
yeah.
3 times at a minimum, and then they can tell you how they did it. I feel like with actors, a lot of time it's guesswork. We do every audition differently, and you don't really track your process. So could you take us through, like, from the moment you received that audition to putting together your self-tape, kinda your step by step and how you've managed to create this formula? Because, 1, 2, 3 is maybe luck, but 20 is no accident.
Well, I will say that I got a really good education when I lived in Los Angeles. I did worked almost not at all, but, I did study with some really, really smart people and specifically, worked with, someone who was a coach, and he would put me on tape for auditions, but it became a situation where, I actually hired him, to give me auditions, for other people that he had put on tape who had booked those auditions, and so he would give me the old audition, I would work on it, he would put me on tape, and then he would show me what the person who booked the audition did for the audition.
Ooh.
And so that was a way that even when I wasn't working, I was getting kind of like inside scoop LA audition stuff
Yeah.
that I couldn't get in regular classes, and, like, I had taken a ton of classes, I've taught a ton of classes, like, I'm always, like, both taking classes and teaching classes, like, that's I feel like that's always part of it for me,
Yeah.
um, but I really learned a lot by working with him, and then, Bob Krakauer is a great coach that a lot of people in New York really swear by, and I've only worked with him for, like, a couple of days, right? But he's really, really thoughtful about this idea of building these images in your auditions, and he's really, these are like, basically guideposts in your auditions, and even if it's just a really small thing, you've gotta have a beginning, middle, and an end, and so I think one of the ways that I've been working in the last couple of years is just being really, really clear about what the function of the character that I'm auditioning for has in the scene. It seems pretty basic, just but being able to say, what's the structure of the scene? Whose story is it? It's not mine. So, what is my function in relationship to the character that I'm working against?
Yeah.
Do I support them? Do I help them? Am I getting in their way? What's my function? Um, Recently, I had an audition to play a judge, right? There's judges on so many different shows, and I'm super psyched because I've never had an audition for a judge before, and I was like, "Oh, man, if I can book a judge, I can work for the next 10 years, like, I'll be just, like, a
Right.
judge on every show?" Um, and I was thinking about that, and there's so many stereotypes, right? We know
Mhm.
what I have to wear in the audition, right? I have to wear black robe. I can't
Yeah.
really put on a red dress and be the judge. You gotta wear the black robe, right? But so that in terms of making a picture is pretty, you're kind of locked into something like that. But, you know, trying to figure out within the audition, the people are worried about this judge, that this judge is very harsh. And so, how I style my hair, what kind of makeup I wear, what kind of jewelry I do or don't wear, the fact that I'm gonna wear glasses to put another barrier between myself and the people that are trying to read me, um, that I make sure that I'm, particularly imposing at the beginning, that I have a moment of transition. Glasses acting, right? You take off the
Yeah.
glasses, look at them gently, um, and that you have a moment where, at the end, you help them. So those are your 3 moments, and you have to craft those, and then I feel like just moving through those moments a couple of times, that helps you learn your lines, and then you kind of, you just try it a few times and, um, try not to be too precious and pick the one you like and send it.
Um, Look, I'm also a student of Bob Krakauer's, and I've trained at his studio quite a bit.
Yeah, tell me.
And no, I mean, you just said it, like we tell stories in pictures on camera. And that's not some woo-woo. It's literally that's how a camera works. It
Yes.
it takes 23 pictures per second, 30 what I mean, you could set your camera rate or whatever, but typically we shoot 23 to 30 frames per second, right? So it's literally taking pictures the whole time. Do, 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 do. And the pictures are happening so fast within a certain amount of time, it appears as if it's just live action happening. Um, so I love what you said about like having those images that you've identified that clearly tell a beginning, middle, and end to where the audience, the person behind the camera, when they're watching your tape, they see, boom, oh, this judge is is tough. This judge is tough. And I love that you use props. I'm also a big prop actor.
Always.
Cause how else are you supposed to do it? You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm in a scene where they say I'm at a bar, I need a glass.
Yeah.
Because also, I mean, the thing that we don't want to admit, but is true, is production value of these self-tapes matters.
Mhm.
It does. Guys at home, I know, like, they're asking so much of us, but it's true. I spoke to a director once, and she said when watching tapes, she was like, "Look, I really try not to allow, like, the production value and the quality to be kind of the deciding thing because, we know everybody's coming from a different place. Some people, all they have is their cell phone. Some people have really nice DSLRs. I'm shooting on a DSLR right now. Um, but she goes, "I'd be lying if I said it didn't, like,
Right.
if it doesn't come into the equation." Because when I'm looking at somebody's image and it's all fuzzy and stuff, and then somebody comes across like, boom, clear, lighting's on point. As you said, they've taken the time, their makeup is right, their wardrobe is right,
Mhm.
they've got the images. It's just like, oh, you said it before. It's a short film.
It is. It is, and I feel like that is something that has become really clear to me in the last 4 years, and so that's the thing that I've been trying to get better at, is how do I craft these little, gifts that I'm sending out into the world, and as, thorough as I can be in terms of, um, surprising people or making people laugh or checking my eye lines or yeah, my lighting, my sound, all that stuff, like, I'm becoming obsessed with that stuff, which, of course, takes the pressure off of the acting thing.
Mm,
You don't really sweat it that much when you're like, "Oh,
sure.
I really need to get this, I wanna make sure I'm in this third of the frame, or I wanna make sure that there's space for blah, blah, blah." And I think as you start to obsess a little bit more about the technical elements, you let go of the brilliant choices that you made when you were, doing your work, and you kinda just, it just loosens you up a little bit.
Yeah, you're not trying as hard to perform because your
Nope.
focus is elsewhere.
Yeah.
Do you do much editing of your tapes, like in post production?
No.
Okay, so once it's set, that's it. You go.
Yeah.
Okay, heard.
I will also say, and I feel so strongly about this, and I genuinely don't know how other people do it, because 'cause I'm a disaster when it comes to reading with people over Zoom. Um, my husband is an actor also, and he is not working as an actor right now. He has a 9 to 5 right now.
Sure.
But he and I work on every audition together, and his training is quite different than mine, and so the stuff that he brings in or asks me about or questions me about or direction that he offers, that kind of collaboration, 1, it's super fun because we both
Mhm.
really love it, but
Yeah.
also, like, I know my stuff is better because we work together.
Mhm.
Um, and I genuinely don't know what people do if they live alone or they have housemates who aren't into helping them or
Yeah.
partners who aren't into helping them, whatever it is, but I know that I've gained so much by working with him.
That's real. My wife, bless her, has helped me with so many she's actually getting pretty good at it.
Yeah,
She's
I'm
just
sure.
like um, but I do make it a point. I always reach out to, like, this group of actors that we all kinda help each other
Mhm.
first
Yep.
because it really is invaluable when you have someone who understands the craft and who is, as Ray Dalio would say, a believable person.
Yeah.
Someone who has done the thing multiple times
Yep.
in their own right. If you have somebody like that who can offer you feedback, absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, not for nothing, our lives are what they are, and most of these auditions happen I tape usually at, like, either 6 a.m. or 9 p.m. because of, work. We have a 10-year-old, all the things that get in the way, and so, like, you need to have a sweetheart who's willing to get up at 6 a.m. and be like, "Yep, let's do it, 3 pages. Let's knock it out before breakfast," you know? So
Man,
I really appreciate that a lot.
man. Can we chat a little about your life outside of the business?
Yeah.
You don't live I mean, you're in the Philly area,
Yes.
which has a bit of a scene, but it's not the juggernauts of New York, LA, Atlanta. What went to that decision for you to move there?
So, in a nutshell, out of college, I moved to Philly because I had an apprenticeship at a theater. I was in Philly for 7 years, moved to New York, was in New York for 7 years, fell in love. My sweetheart and I decided to get married, and he was really geeked about LA, and I was like, "Oh,
Mm,
no. I don't wanna go to LA. I'm good. I'm gonna teach in a university. I wanna be in plays in New York. I'm working on that, taking steps to make that happen." Yeah, anyway, so we adventured forth. We moved to LA. We're in LA for 7 years. Nothing. I shouldn't say nothing good happened. We had our son, which was great, but found ourselves in a position where we had no family, we had no super tight friends. We were both working like crazy, but not a lot was happening, and so we were like, "We have a three-year-old, all our family's in Philly. What are we doing? What are we doing? This is silly." And because I had lived in Philly, I knew a lot about the theater and dance communities there. I knew some casting folks, and so we're like we moved home. Um, we live, you know, close enough now to all of our extended family, which is great. Our kid has grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. Um, we really love it here. We have a lot of friends here, a lot of tight friends. It's great for us. It's a 2-hour drive for me to New York, and it's a 2-hour flight to Atlanta. And
Okay.
so, um, the nature of auditioning right now really supports this particular lifestyle. I don't feel like I'm losing any opportunities. And in fact, because the cost of living is less, and I'm also able to get more jobs as a professor, more jobs as a director, I feel like my artistic life is much more full. And then again, that supports just being a little bit more confident and a little bit more at ease with auditions when they come up.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's not that desperation of, "Oh my god, I need this to eat or I need this to pay my bills."
Right. And I know, and Hassiem, we may have actually talked about that study that was like, if you ask people to do a task for the first time or like solve a puzzle and you time them and then you tell them that you're gonna give them money if they solve it, you time them again, they'll always do worse.
Really? Oh, we
Yeah,
haven't talked about this.
I'll look this
That's
up. I'll look this up for you because
fascinating.
it's so, like, connected so beautifully to acting, which is just like, look, whatever, if you're a rich kid, if you're a working kid, it doesn't matter. You cannot tie this to money. You just can't. It's not gonna help. Gotta, if you need to work, which I do, you gotta find other work, and then it's just gravy if you get it, but it's got nothing to do with money. It cannot have anything to do with money.
Mm.
It
And
cannot.
it's so hard because we work in this industry where the top 1% of earners are some of the top earners in the world.
Right?
You're like, our ceiling as actors is crazy,
It's crazy.
and our
But
floor is
you
awesome.
just cited this, like, crazy less than 1% ever speak on TV. You know what I mean? So it's like, be gentle with ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, get that tape, go get those auditions, like, book it, get it, but don't try to disconnect it from money, is always how I've tried to live, because otherwise it's not gonna work out.
I love that. I love that, and I'm increasingly of that mindset that it's okay if, like, the money you make is from other stuff. Like, if the goal is just ones and zeros in your bank account, do whatever you gotta do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, d let that be the easy part.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? If you have a hookup, if you have a certain kinda gig that's, like, regular, consistent, and it pays the bills, to me, there's no shame
No.
if it because again, if you just need ones and zeros, then get those,
Yeah.
and then allow the artistic experience, like you said, to be gravy, you know?
Yeah, and honestly, like, you and I both also teach, and I feel like, um if you're in a Bob Krakauer class, the feeling that you get from that and the excitement that you get from that and the engagement and the support in the community from that, um, is comparable to what it feels like when you are leading a class. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all in the same world, and it is also comparable to what it feels like to be auditioning or to be on set or to be in a rehearsal room. Um, and so if I'm in any of those worlds, I feel like I'm supporting all of those worlds.
Mm, mm. Now, I saw you have a rep in Jersey, New York, and Atlanta.
Yes.
How's that trifecta working out?
I will tell you, when COVID happened, I lost a performing job that paid the bills. I lost all of my teaching work. I lost all auditioning. Every single thing just vanished. And I know a lot of people were in that position as well. And that experience made me reckless. I was like, I do not care. I will apply to every single job. I will meet any. agent, manager, I will audition for anybody. I'm putting myself out there. And I because of, having family in Atlanta, I was like, "Great, Atlanta local hire, let's do this." You know what I mean? Let's meet people. Like, I, educated myself about Atlanta, I didn't know very much about it. I took a great class with Erica Arvold, who's a casting director down there, met a ton of actors, really spent, like, months, um, kind of understanding a little bit more about, um, the community down there and the culture down there and all of the work down there. Um, and I think, if I was 22, I would move down to Atlanta in a second. That's absolutely where I'd be. Code. 100%. Um, and it so surprises me that when I speak to college students who are graduating and interested, that none of them seem to know about Atlanta. It's still this myth of New York or LA. And it's
That's
so weird. It's so weird. You're like, This is not a
especially
secret."
post-COVID. You could
Ye
live anywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I got a friend who's
Um,
killing it in New Mexico right now.
right.
Killing it.
Ton of stuff shooting there.
Yeah. Now, and I've heard this about Atlanta, that it's a great place to start, but often when it gets to some of the bigger roles, they call in folks from LA and New York anyway. Um,
I honestly can't speak to that. I would say most of the stuff that I've been able to audition for that's in Atlanta has been larger roles than what I'm getting out of New York.
oh, well, shoot.
So my again, it's just one woman, but, yeah, my experience has been that what's available is, um, really exciting, uh, and larger than the stuff that I'm
Yeah.
getting in New York.
Well, that's great to hear. It's
Yeah.
great to hear. And I love when I get actually like differing and conflicting experiences because everyone's experience is their own. And so to me, that's kind of just a sign of where you feel like you can do your best work,
Mhm.
especially for people who are just starting out, and even for people who have found that they're stuck or are plateauing. I have a friend who I would love to have on the show sometime. I should text him. He was in New York for years and he was just like, this isn't working anymore. Early 30s, moved to Atlanta, boom.
Yeah.
I mean, just took off,
Awesome. I
just
love
killing it.
that.
Worked so consistently. Now, all right, you've got around 20 co-stars, which is still a mind-boggling number to me. um, because again, guys, like less than 1% of actors ever get one. And McKenna's sitting here with 20. There's another side of this coin. That's incredible, I believe. Is there any part of you that worries about being stuck in co-star land?
I think there's a couple I have a couple of thoughts about that. First, sure. Yeah, you wanna be, you always wanna be kind of like moving towards something larger on the one hand, but also to be gentle. I don't really have a whole lot of control over that, and we also recognize that some of these co-stars are really large, serious kind of endeavors, um, and so I don't ever feel like I'm in the place to be like, "I won't do co-stars anymore." I recently just did my first comedy co-star, and so
Mhm.
now I'm like, "Oh, I just provided my reps with some tape that might get me more work in
Uh,
comedy because I did a comedy co-star." Do you know what I'm saying? And so, like,
yeah.
I'm really grateful for that, and, I think that's really cool. I also feel like as long as I'm auditioning for co-stars and recurring and some guest star stuff and even some, like, smaller series regular stuff that, I'm just putting myself in the mix to kind of con continue to work.
Yeah.
Um, and I would also say I still need quite a bit of education on set. I feel if, um if I was doing a play and it was tech, I know what tech is like. I know what everyone's job is in the theater. I know what I need to do, what I need to work on during tech.
Mhm.
Whereas on set, I don't still know what every single person's job is. I don't
Sure.
necessarily know exactly how long it's gonna take to turn the cameras around. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't quite have that same education, and because of that, every time I get on set, I'm like, "Oh, like, I need to write this stuff down, like, I need to lear
Yeah.
like, I need to constantly be learning." So, at least for right now, I'm not sweating it. I'm happy to have all of it.
I love it. I love that that's where you're at. Because as you said, it's so much is outside of our control.
Yeah.
And I could only imagine with as many credits as you now have, like when it comes time when that perfect role comes along, that's just gonna make that director or producer's decision that much easier to cast you and to take that risk because they're gonna see like, oh, she has so much experience. Like she's been on over 20 sets? Because we were just talking about your co-star roles. You have appearances in films as well. Like you've built up a real body of work. So I can only imagine that it's all additive.
I hope so, yeah.
All right, McKenna, my final question for you
Yes.
that I ask everyone is what is your defining quality that you bring to the table as a storyteller? What makes you different when McKenna shows up to the theater or on set?
I think, um, I enjoy, um, keeping a secret, keeping a little mystery, holding back a little bit. Maybe it's a quality that's a little inscrutable. Um, maybe it's something that reads can read as, someone who has power or someone
Uh,
who has, strength, but it's just a little something that's ooh, I can't tell what it is. That and I think now I have white hair, and I think white hair is also something that I bring to the table, if we're being honest.
I
It's a
don't
visual
have
medium.
white hair, so amazing. Well, McKenna, thank you so much for sharing some of your secrets with us today. It's been a pleasure getting to hear about your process and really understanding the work and the detail that goes into something that sometimes we can minimize because of how it's built. But as you said, like that's a full person, you're telling a full story and got to create a full picture. So
Thank you. Thanks, Hassiem. I really appreciate it.
thank you. Guys, if you enjoyed this conversation with McKenna, then you'll love a recent interview I did with The Wire's George Bennett Watson. So be sure to check that out. Wherever you're listening, please give us a like, a follow, or a subscribe. It helps the channel out a ton. And we'll catch you next week, next Tuesday, for another episode of The Actor's Instrument. Till next time, y'all. Peace.